Stop with the questions. Celebrate.
And then they say, is Donald Trump an intellectual? Trust me, I'm like a smart person. Yosemite's one of the wettest we've ever seen from the standpoint of water.
Mike Lindell's a conspiracy.
Well, you haven't. Person, woman, man, camera, TV. They said nobody gets it in order. It's actually not that easy, but for me it was easy.
Amazing.
He can't sit down. He's got a burning in his butthole. He's got a fire. He's got a flame coming out of his butthole.
Big, massive dumps.
Oh, I have a term for that. I call it corporate communism.
Somebody sent me a thing this morning where they're talking about putting the vaccine into salad dressing.
You see, this is a simple meme that you would find on the internet, but this meme is very real.
You ain't seen nothing yet until you see the flaming butthole.
Putting us on our knees to China.
Now witness the firepower of this fully armed and operational battle station.
Peachtree dish. And why their due process rights are being so flagrantly and horrifically violated.
On the nation, Waldorf Nation. What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Or whatever. Okay, it's one of those days. So we got a lot of news. We'll get to the news. If you haven't already, like and share the stream. We got stories. We have Jordan Peterson. We have sexually transmitted demons. Yeah.
Get in a long tube with a bunch of demons.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about Marjorie Green and the Highland Park massacre and her solution to it. Well, not her solution, sorry. But her, what she thinks might have been the problem. Because, of course, they have no solutions. We also have another Republican saying, we just had this mass shooting, but I think it's just time to move on. It's time to celebrate. We're going to celebrate our freedom. Freedom. And then you're not going to be surprised that Republicans, what they use some COVID money for. So we got a fun show. It's Tuesday. It's holidays over. Let's dive in. A Trump-backed candidate in for Michigan Secretary of State's office is on the record warning Americans about STDs. No, not those STDs. Sexually transmitted demons.
If a person has demonic possession, I know it's going to sound really crazy me saying that for some people. They're like, what? But having intimate relationships with people who are demonically possessed or oppressed, I strongly believe that a person opens themselves up to possession. Demonic possession is real.
Look, okay, let me just say this. We're going to start out with saying how I love how there is a tiny hint of self-realization. Hey, look, y'all, I'm about to say something that's really crazy. Okay, then why are you saying it? For one. And secondly, why do you actually believe it? And hey, you know what? you delivered. So I guess promises made, promises kept. Wow. Sexually transmitted demons. I'm not sure if Trojan has a condom for that one. They might want to get on it. Can you imagine, like, going into business and selling like demonic proof condoms to these people? I swear it would almost be like, I was going to say selling, ketchup to a woman in white gloves. You have to be a really good salesperson. And by the way, it doesn't have to be a woman in white gloves. It could be anybody with white gloves. But you have to be a really good salesman. But for them, they might be stupid enough to buy it from you anyway. Hey, have you heard of these condoms? They prevent demonic possession. They're covered in holy water. Dipped in some holy water, okay? So that, you're holy when you're getting it on. When you're doing the dirty, you can do it clean. Catholics wouldn't be able to use a demon-proof condom. It's insane. It's insane. All right, but there's more. She's not done yet. She also talked about abortion, of course, seeing as how we recently had the ruling on Roe, but this was actually from her podcast 2021. So these are earliest before the end of Roe, while Republicans were still attempting to do that. And while she was doing her podcast, here's what she said about that. She basically called it child sacrifice. Quote, when people in other cultures, when they engage in child sacrifice, they didn't just sacrifice for the child for the sake of bloodshed. Again, there's no one that does that. Sacrificing children for bloodshed. What is this? She said they sacrificed a child because they were hoping to get prosperity. And that's precisely why people have abortion now. Because I'm not ready. I don't want to have a baby. Again, perfectly valid reasons to have an abortion. I don't feel like it. Again, another valid reason. I don't have time. I want to make more money. I want my freedom. Again, all completely valid reasons to not have a baby. But as she's going to say, so you're sacrificing that child and hoping to get something out of their death? Which is your freedom, your happiness, your prosperity? No, okay, so wait a minute. We're pro-freedom, except, we don't want you, if you're a woman and, you're pregnant, we don't want you to have your freedom, we don't want you to have your happiness, and we don't want you to have your prosperity. But we're the party of freedom. Interesting. So look, the through line that underlines all of these arguments that she makes is basically this. People like her believe that babies, children, pregnancies are a punishment for having sex. That is your punishment. How dare you lay down and have sex outside of procreation? Now you are going to be punished by being forced to procreate. That's the underlying thought behind all of this. It is a punishment for sexual activity. Not something that to be born out of love. No. Again, you decided to lie down, and here's your consequences. Now raise this child for life and be unhappy and, be thrust into poverty. Now, look, we talk about the mother a lot for good reason, of course. It's an incredibly important part of this conversation, but there's not a lot of conversation about the kid. What kind of life that child is going to have in the first place. If it's going to be a good life. If you're going to have a quality of life. You know what I'm saying? And so, look, when it comes to having unwanted children, how do you think that's going to affect that child? Probably not in a good way if you're sitting in, if you're having a family that is already dealing with poor economic conditions, having that exacerbated by another child, having the misery lost opportunities for parent and child. And that's assuming that they're, parent and child are both healthy. And the child isn't born with any, disabilities or anything like that can definitely have an impact in the quality of life for both parent and child. But all of that, by the way, is second to the case of bodily autonomy. That's the biggest consideration in all of this, okay? So now she has every right to make the decision for herself. What she does not have the right to do is to make that decision for anyone else. That literally is the core of bodily autonomy. And I think that's really important to point out. Now, the other thing that's interesting is calling it child sacrifice. Really? Again, Roe basically set up a time framing system before fetal viability. Meaning that, of course, if this fetus cannot survive outside the womb, it is not considered an independent life. And the science backs all of that. And so what you have here is, in many cases, a clump of cells, a fetus that is a zygote, that is not alive. And that's even according to their own definitions from the Bible, which they say life begins at first breath. And so, but no, it's child sacrifice. And again, the vast majority of abortions are performed in the early stages of pregnancy. But again, she calls it child sacrifice. So that's kind of like making an omelet chicken sacrifice. Or, or trying to present batter of like brownies as a fully formed and cooked brownie. Like, imagine like going to a bake-off with these people, and they'll bring in. I mean, you could probably bring in like a bowl of, cake mix and all the ingredients to say, what are you talking about? This is a cake. It's a fully formed, fully cooked cake. Why don't you dig in? It's the same thing. And that's really the argument, that they say that these cells are a complete and fully formed human, which again, the Bible doesn't even agree. And not only that, but the Bible also teaches people how to induce an abortion. So again, the whole thing is just ridiculous and based on a lot of falsehoods. But there's more. She also goes on to make anti-LGBTQ comments, and even accuses couples who cohabitate before marriage. She accuses them of trying to open the door to people who want to normalize pedophilia. What? What does any of that have to do with the other things? That doesn't make any sense. Now, it would be very easy to write her off as insane because she sounds like an insane person. But understand that this is considered to be a mainstream position in the Republican Party, for one. But it really is a good example as well of what happens when fundamentalists, a complete misunderstanding of your own religion and this fundamental interpretation of the religion, the effect that that has in your brain. So, I mean, and again, getting back to the fact that this is mainstream in the Republican Party, she's been endorsed by former President Donald Trump. And so this is where they're at. Okay? This is where Republicans are. They've completely lost touch with any values of freedom. They say they're in favor of freedom. They're not in favor of freedom. They're in favor of freedom for corporations, freedom for white people, men, specifically white Christian men. But when it comes to everybody else, well, their freedoms come second. And they can have them as long as they don't impact me. Well, that's not real freedom. That's not real liberty. And they're not living in reality. All right. White male landowners. All right, let's move on. Jordan Peterson is going through some things, not so good things. Last week, the so-called self-help guy was suspended from Twitter for blatantly dead-naming, misgendering, and being obsessed with Elliot Page's body. Page, who is transgender, recently, maybe not recently, but had disclosed that he had went through top surgery in order to help with gender dysphoria to match his identity. That apparently made Peterson a little uncomfortable. Curious. Maybe it's because he couldn't fap to Elliot Page anymore. I don't know. Maybe we'll get into that. Peterson then also criticized the physician who helped Page go through this transition, calling that physician a butcher. Interesting. So now he gets suspended for this deeply transphobic tweet and decided to double down, of course. In response to the suspension on Instagram, Peterson said this, and this was him on Instagram talking about being banned on Twitter.
In response to the decision of an actor named Elliot Page, I am employing this awkward and impossible naming style because it is now apparently mandatory and am probably doing it wrong nonetheless, as you're doing it wrong is the whole point of what is being made mandatory. But also, I'm trying to make a point. I've essentially been banned from Twitter as a consequence. I say banned, although technically I have been suspended. But the suspension will not be lifted unless I delete the hateful tweet in question, and I would rather die than do that. And hopefully it will not come to that, although who the hell knows in these increasingly strange days.
I mean, again, dramatic much? Wow. Wow. I would rather die than use pronouns and not deadening Elliot Page. You know, he talked about how difficult it is. Oh, the impossible standards. How hard is it? His name is Elliot and he's a man. That's it. Oh my God. It's that simple. Wow. Wow. But no. Oh no. Very, very difficult. Very difficult for him. Now, again, here's the thing. It's only difficult if you make it difficult. And that's what Jordan Peterson's doing. He's just making it difficult. And by the way, it's also what transphobes do. They're obviously incredibly obsessed with other people's genitals. It's true. And I have a couple of theories, and you know, maybe they're right, maybe not. For one, again, as I mentioned, Peterson probably is mad that he had once jerked off to Elliot. Just saying. And now, again, he can't because he's disgusted, like, oh my God. Oh, I can't do that now. Oh, Elliot has transitioned. He is now confused and horny, possibly horngry. It's a new word. It's a mix of horny and angry. He's horngry, everybody. But again, that's just, I mean, that's beyond, this goes beyond Peterson, okay? And I do think that transphobic men specifically, and I'm actually talking about in general for transgender people, okay? On transgender women, for example, transphobes, I think they feel betrayed. These men, Okay? For them, being a man is totally awesome and wonderful. I'm a man. I feel like it's pretty awesome too. I like being a dude. All right, great. Now, of course, for men, there's a lot of reasons why being a man is great. For one, there's never been any question of my reproductive rights. I wish women had the same, I wish we didn't question their reproductive rights. It'd be great if we didn't. If we let them do what they're going to do with their own bodies. But for men, there's never been a question. Never been a question, right? No one's ever tried to legislate being a man, males' bodies, and what we do with them. So now, why transphobes are so triggered by trans women is because maybe they see them as gender traitors. I mean, all the time, and again, it goes back to how obsessed they are with transgender people's genitals. They're mad because, oh, you're chopping off your penis. How dare you? You'll never be a real woman. Because you don't have a uterus. And of course, it comes down to, we want to control that uterus. Right-wing men, and I've pointed this out before, right? A lot of them see women as walking, talking wombs, of which they can just breed. That's it. Now, trans people do not fit into their worldview at all. And so they want to erase them. And worse, they want those people who in their minds are second-class citizens. Women, they think women are second-class citizens whose only purpose is to be used for reproduction. That's what they see women as. And so transgender women don't fit into that because, well, you can't even fit the primary purpose of what I think a woman should be, and that's just breeding stock. And worse, you're a gender traitor. You're a gender traitor. How dare you become something else that I want to control, but can't? Now, for trans men, transphobes will look at that. We'll look at people like Elliot Page and say, well, you still have a uterus. And so you'll never be a man. You'll never be one of us. And I can still control you because you still have a uterus. So understand that that's the pathology that we're dealing with. So those are the theories, right? And again, I just sit there and think about, okay, what drives a transphobe to think about this, to obsess about people's genitals so much? Why do they obsess about this? Why do they obsess about, what is the technical definition of a woman? I mean, they had made a whole ridiculous documentary about it. And I think that's the only thing that I could think of. So that's the pathology I think we're dealing with a lot of transphobes. But there's another one that's at play, and that concerns the right-wing griftosphere. Great example of that, Dave Rubin. Here's what he tweeted. The insanity continues at Twitter. Jordan Peterson is suspended for his tweet about, and again, he dead names Elliot Page. He just told me he will never delete the tweet. Paging Elon Musk. Now, I love how they immediately run to, anytime they get in trouble, right? They run to Daddy Musk. Hilarious. As if Elon Musk controls Twitter. Again, he hasn't even bought Twitter. Very likely he will not buy Twitter. Will never complete the sale. Will try to get out of paying the $1 billion he owes for not doing the sale. But it doesn't matter. It really shows how some of these people, again, if you're out there calling for Elon Musk to come and save you because you broke TOS on purpose, well, and this is what you are.
Beta male. Beta.
That's it. But it gets funnier. And also more sad. Because, again, Dave Rubin, he didn't get suspended for quoting or showing an image of Jordan Peterson's tweet. In that same tweet, he also dead names Elliot Page. Dead names him. And then, by the way, afterwards, after he gets suspended for this, he goes and does a statement where he basically directs people to his shitty website, Locals. So, you know, he goes and he cries. And that's what Dave Rubin does. That's what all these conservatives do. They get suspended doing things on purpose that they know they're not going to be able, or that they shouldn't actually do. And then they cry. Oh my God, I can't believe I broke the rules. I can't believe you're punishing me for breaking the rules. Now I'm going to go cry and beg for attention and for money. And it does work. It does work. Speaking of grifters, Ben Shapiro. Here comes Ben Shapiro wading into this as well. And, well, we know what it is.
It's like a shark, NATO, except with poop.
Here's what he said. He said, Rubin Report has now been suspended for posting news about Jordan Peterson's suspension, all because we are not allowed to mention that until 5 minutes ago, Elliot Page, who was very, 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 very male, was a female actress. Here's Dave's statement. And again, also dead names Elliot Page. So again, they keep doing it. They keep doing the same damn thing. But then, and by the way, he knows exactly what he's doing. That's why he also says, well, Elliot, very, 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 very male, you know, up until like 5 minutes ago. No, not literally 5 minutes ago. Elliot Page has been in transition for a long time. And look, even when we didn't know that Elliot Page was transgender, he knew what he was, and he was struggling with it for quite some time until he was able to finally come out and be himself. Now, Ben Shapiro, of course, didn't give a damn. What Ben Shapiro was doing is kind of skirting the line, right? So he's saying the things, he's for one, being a little careful so that he doesn't get banned, but also sets it up that if he gets banned, he's got something to cry about. And so what he's doing is partaking in the right-wing grievance industry that has popped up. And so, look, when you get banned on Twitter or on social media and you're a right-winger for flagrantly violating TOS, that actually helps you on the right. It really, really does. You get all this attention. Hell, maybe Joe Rogan talks about it. And then you get to hawk your shitty website or your social media service, which, by the way, in a lot of these cases, and we've looked, for example, Locals, friend of the show, Lance, over at the Surfs, created an account on Locals. And guess what? When you create an account, you have to be approved. Okay? So he put down the name, Debate Sam Cedar, you coward. Hey, look, I thought you believe in free speech, right? Don't you believe in free speech? Well, he's expressing his free speech by putting that username on. What happened? What happened? It took him a year over on Locals to basically deny his request and ban him. Hey, what are we talking about? Free speech! Free speech! What's wrong with you guys? No, they oftentimes have rules and TOSs that are more restrictive than we have on Twitter. And then they, of course, are the first ones to cry about the TOS on Twitter. I mean, again, we talked about True Social, how excessive capitalization will get you banned. Come on. Again, the whole thing is ridiculous. And by the way, sets up a weirdo right-wing echo chamber where they all cry about how their free speech is being violated somehow by someone else. But anyway, they've taken this, the people who run these sites, the Dave Rubins, the Ben Shapiros of the world, they have used this in order to make money. So this is not about any sort of principles. This is not about freedom. It's not about liberty. No, what it is that it's about attention. It's about money. and it's about making yourself into a victim, which right now, the right wing is in love with being a victim. They just eat up that victimhood mentality with a big old spoon, because that's who they are. All right. Moving on, let's go to the next one here. Unfortunately, we had another mass shooting in this country, this time on July 4th. The Highland Park area in Illinois became the latest backdrop for a mass shooting. So now there was an alleged sniper who has been identified as perpetrator. This is 22-year-old Robert Crimo III, or Crimo, whatever. He was arrested for killing 6 and injuring dozens of others, about 30 so far, in the rather affluent area with a semi-automatic rifle during an Independence Day parade. Now, so far, police are not saying that they have a motive. However, it is clear that he had planned this for several weeks. That said, Marjorie Greene thinks, I know it's kind of an ironic statement, really. She believes she knows why this happened, and that that everybody's hiding the real reasons why this had happened. In fact, here she tweets, "What drugs and or psychiatric drugs was he on for his mind to be ruined in alternate reality games that caused him to commit a mass shooting? His parents know. The police know. School, arrest, hospital records. The public deserves to know." Now, okay, you know what's funny about this? So she's asking what kind of drugs he's on. Isn't that a HIPAA violation? Again, remember during the pandemic, Marjorie Greene was constantly crying about HIPAA violations when she was asked about her COVID vaccination status, which again, revealing the vaccination status during a pandemic, at least when it comes to COVID-19, is not a violation of HIPAA. But, you know, disclosing that the fact that they're on medication might be. But anyway, slight bit of hypocrisy. But okay, so now she demands to know if he's on antidepressants or whatever drugs. Again, hypocritical, also really stupid, because antidepressants do not cause mass shootings. That's it. Video games, alternate reality video games, do not cause mass shootings. Now, I guess maybe if you live in an alternate reality, such as, you know, the people that are in MAGA, that do, that, you know, think that that the election was stolen, and that the white replacement theory is like a real thing and not just normal demographic shifts and changes, you know. But okay, sure, she thinks all these weirdo things, alternate reality. But look, the reality is, at least on those things, white replacement theory, not real. Video games don't cause mass shootings, and neither do antidepressants. Simple as that. Again, we know that he planned this for weeks. We know he legally purchased the weapons that he had used. They found, obviously, one on the scene where he had, interestingly enough, and I actually kind of thought, like, when this was originally reported, I read the headline, And it's like, oh, he dressed in women's clothing. I was like, why is that relevant at all? But then as I read, further into it, in reality, it was just a way for him to try to blend in with the crowd and escape the day of the shooting. So I was like, oh, okay, so they're not like trying to do this weird, anti-cross-dresser or, transphobic kind of crap. Okay, but still, this just shows that it was planned. He used that clothing to cover up distinctive tattoos that he had, and he used that to blend in with the crowd and to escape the shooting. They found that gun on a rooftop. They also found a gun in his car after they arrested him. And by the way, he is alive, so sooner or later, we will know a motive. We will have an answer to that. We also know that he had posted disturbing, violent images online. So, and made music videos, like he was apparently some rapper or whatever, posting like, I don't know. I'm not sure how to describe all of this other than being disturbing. I guess an example here is drawing stick figures of himself wearing tactical gear, holding rifles, with, I guess, some of the lyrics saying, I need to just do it. It is my destiny. Now, if that isn't a red flag, I don't know what is. Another video, a stick figure resembling Kremos depicted laying in a pool of blood surrounded by police. So, again, that's also incredibly disturbing, super red flag law-y. But let me just say this. Video games don't do that to people. Medication doesn't do that to people. Again, those are harmful stigmas that are really meant to take away from the major focus here. And that is, of course, the fact that people like this can get their hands on deadly weapons at any time. And it's actually cheaper and easier to get a weapon than to actually get yourself some help if you need it. And look, humans have been killing each other long time before the invention of medications or, video games, even guns. And so the only difference now is that when you have these high-powered rifles, well, you can kill a lot of people real easy. Real easy. So maybe, we had to focus on trying to keep these weapons out of the hands of people like this guy. Might be a good idea. Now, of course, you're going to see people like Marjorie Greene. You're already seeing her distract. You're already seeing Republicans distract from the need for effective gun reform by bringing up this. And now you're also seeing, like, even before the live stream started today, there were people linking Gateway Pundit articles about how he's secret Antifa. Why would that matter? Again, being in, and by the way, that's not even true. But if it was, what would that even matter? Honestly, it just doesn't matter. But in the same thing, like on the other side, there's pictures of him verified of him wearing a Trump flag as a cape, going to Trump rallies. Apparently his dad is a MAGA candidate, or maybe a MAGA Republican, sorry. And so, But even your political leanings don't necessarily mean that you're going to be a mass shooter. And so there is this narrative, there is this distraction going on away from the idea of actually doing something about mass shootings by restricting access to weapons. And so, eye on the ball. Let's not get distracted by the BS narratives that are coming out, especially from the right wing, We've got to do something about mass shootings, and that means actually doing something about guns. Okay. Moving on. More mass shooting related news. Just hours after a gunman opened fire during an Independence Day parade in a Chicago suburb, Illinois State Senator Darren Bailey, a Republican, called for people to move on, celebrate. It's 4th of July.
About 20 minutes away from here in Highland Park, there was a shooting. There were several people that we know have been shot. That's all we know. And we're just going to take a moment and pray for the families. Friends, let's pray for the law enforcement and even the organizers of this parade. They've done an amazing job. There's a lot of confusion and frustration that the parade's being canceled, but they did the right thing because people's safety has got to come first. The shooter is still at large, so let's pray for justice to prevail. And then let's move on and let's celebrate the independence of this nation.
I mean, there it is. There it is. Celebrate. Yes. Celebrate. Wow. I mean, I got to ask. Celebrate what? What are we celebrating here? What is there to celebrate?
Stop with the questions. Celebrate.
That's their message for everything other than, thoughts and prayers. We got thoughts and prayers for you. We got a whole truckload of thoughts and prayers ready for the victims. But by the way, hey, let's go light off some fireworks now. Really? And you don't think all the explosions and the popping of the fireworks are going to be confused with guns, with gunshots? So, and by the way, the people that survived that, they're never going to ever have a good 4th of July again. Because what's the first thing they're going to think of whenever Independence Day comes around? They're going to think about this. All right? They're going to hear those fireworks and be thrown right back into the day where they almost died and where 6 people were killed. So, I mean, look, he also said this: bless us and protect us as we go about our day celebrating the most amazing country. The most amazing country. How are we amazing? How's it amazing in the United States right now? Rights are being stripped away from women, anyone with a uterus. And regular people are getting gunned down in the streets by mass shooters. Look, we're the only country in the world that has this problem. And it's not like we don't know how to solve it. It's just the people in power refuse to solve it. Like this guy. This guy is a Republican politician. And guess what? Big shocker. He's in favor of more guns, guns for all. In fact, he had pushed back against Illinois and their gun control laws. So they have actually something called a firearm owner's ID. So you're supposed to have it. It's a legal requirement for you to have and present if you want to buy a gun and ammunition in Illinois. You know what he called that law? An attack on our Second Amendment rights. He said this, and this is on his website: there is no question the FOID card is an outdated requirement in a broken system, and gun owners are being punished for it. Democrats need to stop finding reckless ways to constantly regulate our state's residents and void the FOID completely. So just get rid of it. Get rid of it. That's what he says. Meaning, of course, we're going to go back to where you don't actually have to present any sort of identification or, you know, go through any background checks or anything like that in order to get a gun. Now, in 2020, by the way, Bailey's team also held a fundraiser, like a lot of Republicans, that, you know, featured a raffle for a semi-automatic rifle. Because of course he did. That's who this guy is. Against gun control measures, and very, very pro-gun. And you can see that in his statements, he never references the guns, but just mentions things like mental health and thoughts and prayers. In fact, here is what he told Vice News. Bailey's spokesperson sent out a statement saying, quote, "I apologize if in any way we diminished the pain being felt across our state today. I am heartbroken by today's tragic events and the pain and loss felt by so many. My intent was to pray for the victims and those affected by today's tragedy, and for the shooter to be caught and prosecuted without further loss. I hope we can all come together in prayer and action to address rampant crime and mental health issues to make sure these horrific tragedies don't happen again." Nothing about the guns. Nothing about the guns. Just, it's crime. Oh, mental health. Thoughts and prayers. That's all we can do. Thoughts and prayers. I got news for you. Prayer hasn't been working. Doesn't do a goddamn thing, literally. As for mental health, don't buy the bullshit. Republicans don't actually care about that either. Because they never, ever, ever actually fund mental health services. And in fact, what they do is keep people from seeking mental health help. It is easier in this country to get a high-powered weapon than to see a psychiatrist. I mean, you want to talk about waiting lists? Try to see somebody for mental health issues, okay? You're going to get put on a waiting list, and that's if you're lucky enough to have insurance to be able to pay for it. But, you know, guns, no waiting list, instant. Hey, you can walk into certain gun shops or to a gun show, pick up a gun and ammo that day. But again, if you want to get any sort of mental health treatment, you got to call, you got to make an appointment. Maybe you'll get put on a waiting list, very, very long, some in many cases, just to try and get some help. Well, that's what happens. I mean, under Republican right-wing rule. But it also gets worse, too, because the toxicity in the right-wing movement also deters people who might actually have the means to go and get mental health. Look, among right-wing men, there is this, again, toxic masculinity. Not to be confused with actual masculinity, which isn't toxic at all. But there's the toxic one, where basically you have guns, which are seen as manly. So the more guns you have, the manlier you are to them. Whereas if you actually are suffering problems and you actually have emotions and you need someone to help you deal with them, talk them out, try to help you figure out ways and strategies of being able to cope with these emotions or depression or PTSD, etc. Any of that, well, that's something that weak beta males do, because real strong manly men don't have any emotions. Only rage and horniness. That's all they're allowed. And they're, by the way, you're not supposed to act in the horny. You're just supposed to be enraged 24/7. That's toxicity. That's toxicity. And so, I wonder what happens when you have people that are in that atmosphere who are insecure. Right-wing men, young right-wing men especially, who are facing, again, challenges. What do you think they're going to do? What do you think that's going to make them choose? Healthcare, mental health care, or guns? I think we know the answer to that because we have been seeing it play out several times a week. It's sad for our country. Okay. All right, last story for you. A year after Congress approved of the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan, that is the stimulus package during COVID, Republicans have decided to take the money that's left over, because turns out there's a lot of money left over, and they're using it to fund tax cuts. Because of course. So now, this according to an article by the Washington Post, Republicans in nearly 24 states have increased their efforts to try to take some of that money that was set aside for the pandemic, which, by the way, still people are still getting sick with COVID. People are still dying from COVID. COVID is here. It's here for good. It's going to stay. They've decided to take money that they could have used to, fight that, help people get vaccines, help people get tested, or even shore up their local economies. If there's enough people that get off sick, there's big outbreaks, or even prepare for a potential recession. They've decided to take that money to go and give tax breaks to the rich and corporations, because of course. Oh, and also, by the way, to try to do gas tax holidays, like in the case of Florida and Ron DeSantis, to try to not only starve, their general fund of money, but also to try to help Republicans win in midterm elections, of course. So now, look, how do they actually do this? So, look, when the American Rescue Plan passed, Congress basically gave a blank check to every city and state to bolster their budget, right? They set very, very few rules, conditions for how local leaders could use that money. That was a big complaint from progressives saying, hey, you're just going to allow these corporations or states to use the money to plug their own budget holes. So they said, well, we'll make one rule. You're not allowed to subsidize tax cuts. Almost immediately, Republicans in many states sued the Biden administration to allow themselves to use that money to give tax cuts. Because of course they did. And by the way, the Republican takeover of the judiciary on the local level has actually helped them in a lot of these cases where judges pushed through by the Trump administration have been making rulings. And again, these are local judges that would allow these states to use this money in order to give tax cuts or to, fund their, plug some holes in their budget so that they can then use the money that they had saved for tax cuts. So now, right after this passed, GOP leaders challenged the tax cut in court. Attorneys generals in 21 states fought to overturn the Biden administration's policy, according to federal court filings, backed at times by groups like the Chamber of Commerce, whose corporate members lobbied conservative leaning states to reduce tax bills. In nearly every case, they have prevailed, hamstringing the Treasury Department while opening the door for states to pursue their own tax cuts. In Florida, for example, as I mentioned, the DeSantis and his allies were able to leverage about $200 million in federal coronavirus aid to pay for the gas tax, the suspension of the gas tax. In Texas, state leaders shifted federal coronavirus dollars around in the budget to free up funds for crackdowns on immigration. And other states had used it to shore up unemployment insurance programs. Normally, if the unemployment insurance in a state runs out of money, which they did during the pandemic, a lot of them did, they might actually have to raise taxes on corporations. They decided, no. With the advice of the Chamber of Commerce, who said, oh, don't worry about that. Don't raise taxes on us. Just use that free government money. Use that for your unemployment shortfall and don't raise taxes on me. And that's exactly what happened. Again, it saves them money, saves their members money, because, hey, it's the federal government's money. It's not our money. Oh, no. No. So now, ironically, the Republicans in the states had successfully argued in court that they needed the money. And they needed to have no stipulations on where they spend that money, because they argued the federal government is putting us in a very, very difficult position right now, because if we refuse to follow their stipulations, well, then we lose out on a lot of aid money. Well, yeah, that's kind of the point. That way you use the money responsibly as it's supposed to be used, and not to give your donors tax cuts. But they argued that, and while they argued that in the states, the same Republican, or I should say, the state's Republican representatives in Washington voted unanimously against the package, saying, oh, it's going to create waste. The same waste that Republicans in the states are saying we needed the money to do. We needed to waste it on tax cuts for corporations. And look, the numbers on this are just disastrous. At least 16 states committed about $14 billion toward replenishing their unemployment funds. That move spared businesses having to deal with tax hikes, and also took money away from what these governments might have put towards other health or economic initiatives. So, also taking away money from housing, taking away money from public transportation, taking away money from, trying to help make sure that these workplaces are safe, taking away money from all of that, and just giving it in tax cuts for the rich. And the Biden administration can't do a damn thing about it. Because again, you have all these justices, all these judges that are ruling against it and saying, hey, look, federal government can't actually stipulate how a state spends this federal money that has been basically block granted to you with, no strings attached almost. So, hey, look, that's what happens when you have and live under corporate rule. Corporations get everything while the taxpayer continues to get screwed. All right. Well, that's all the stories I've got for the day. We'll read some super chats here. So let's go to that. As well as on Twitch. Jayhawker41 the Ball Dragon, we'll start with that. Resubbed for a month, tier 1. Saying baby time. I'm not sure what that means, but okay. Sure. Espoon85 says, yo. All right. Let's see. Let's go over here to super chat. Let me go and find that real quick. Madi Darno says, long live Rielen N, the gifter. Indeed. Okay, so also we've got new members as well, or members that have re-upped. So I want to give a shout out to let's see. Progressive Boomer Dragon, I believe. DJ Mikey B, Ideal Paradox, Mr. Shadow, and Mithril. Thank you for signing up to become a member on YouTube. Really, really appreciate that. So, all right. To everybody, thank you. Have a great evening. Have a good day. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Good Wednesday show. Love you all. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation. We'll see you all tomorrow. I gifted those subs. Oh, well, thank you, Rialan. Rialan N. I really appreciate it. All right. Have a great night. We'll see you later.
Big, massive dumps.
I have not loved this conversation.
Dumps.
There's insanity in the control room.
Obama.
They're kicking me out the door. They're kicking me out the door.